So I tried to record the audio for this in person via video, but it was all next to a big creek that was really loud and you couldn't hear me. So I'll have to stick with the voiceover for this one. But I wanted to show you guys something that's really important to me. This is Frederick Emert in Emert's Cove. I am a member of the First Families of Tennessee through the Tennessee Historical Society, and Frederick Emert was one of the first settlers in this area, and he is my direct line ancestor. The cemetery I just showed you lays right outside of the entrance to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park Greenbrier area. This area was once the home to a thriving community. The road has recently been redone, so it was actually very pleasant to drive out this time. Just be careful when you're parking. And this area was once known, or went to an area known as Lindsaytown. The Emerts and the Lindsays are my mom's side of the family, and this was once a thriving community with farms and businesses, and none of it's left. And there's no records or buildings or anything left. After this national park system took over, they systematically eradicated the buildings that would have consisted of my family's original 1790s settlement area, and the whole town of Lindsaytown is now gone. While the road has been greatly improved, it is still not friendly for large vehicles or campers or anything to go down. So be super careful, because people with large vehicles do still try to go down, and it's barely wide enough for two-way traffic. But I was going to an area which I was familiar with. The road splits and goes two different ways, and I had an idea in my head of what I was going to do that day, but they had that end of the road blocked off because they were working on it. So I ended up having to go out toward the Ramsey Cascades side of this section of the park. I'd never been to Ramsey's Cascades, but I thought it might be a fun new adventure. By far the best part of this area is that it's low traffic and the creeks. So I want to give you some time to enjoy the creeks before I continue telling you about this. Early on in the pathway, it really follows closely to the creek, and it's absolutely beautiful to listen to. There's some really awesome, really ancient rock formations that just really captured my imagination. I wanted to include in this, and just the sharpness of this stone being broke and the size does not really translate well into photographs or videos. The trail seemed like it was going to be okay starting out. It's wide, but then it got narrower and narrower and steeper and steeper. And then once you think about giving up, it opens back up and is nice and flat and wide again. And it really just kind of sets you out for a false sense of security. I can do long walks, I can do many miles, and I am not new to hiking, but I was not physically or mentally prepared for this hike. It was probably the most physically challenging things that I have ever done, and I am kind of embarrassed to say that I didn't make it to the actual falls. I made it about 4.5 miles in, and it started to thunder, and I just gave up because it just kept getting steeper and steeper and steeper. I got a little delusional by this point of the trail, and this was a good representation of my gasping for air. Um, as I continued on out the trail, I ran into a few other hikers. It's not a very highly trafficked trail, and these two hikers said, "Oh, we just saw some bears," which I was hiking by myself, which made me a little uncomfortable, but I just kept powering on. And the little bridges over the creeks are just really pretty. They're logs. And just when you thought that the pathway couldn't get any steeper or more hazardous, it continued to get steeper and more hazardous. And you had to go through some creeks and around. And there was some old growth wood in this area. I guess it survived all the years of logging, but I had not seen in person trees quite this large or tall, so that was probably my favorite part of this hike, is getting to see those trees way up there on the mountain, which are just so shockingly large. At one point, the pathway turned almost entirely to a snaggle mess of roots, and then I kept hearing things in the wood, which I was afraid was a bear, so I kept uh, stopping and making sure I wasn't being followed by a bear and looking around. So this is my interpretation of my paranoid walk. As you continue on out the pathway, the trees continue to get bigger, and like I said before, this was probably my favorite part of this hike. The creek, of course, is beautiful, but you really can't see it once you get a good ways out the trails, a couple miles. The creek's way down below you. The trail pretty much disappears into this giant rock formation, and you just kind of have to figure out which way to go across the big rocks along the creek, which is absolutely beautiful. And then it got so steep that they had put in rocks as stepping stones, but pretty much completely vertically, and it was a wet day, so these were really slick. So definitely be careful if you go out on this trail. I'm quite disappointed in myself, but I've made it 4 miles into this, and the sign said it was 4 miles to the falls, and it's just a giant slip and slide behind me, and I keep tripping and sliding, and I'm out here by myself, and ain't nobody out here, so I'm calling it. I'm turning it around. I'm kind of mad at myself, but I tried. I'll try again another time. I'm more out of shape than I thought I was. So this was the point of the pathway where I turned around. It's red clay, and there just was not anywhere to grip or try to get a footing to go up, and I was afraid to fall and die in the woods. Overall, this was a beautiful hike. It is definitely not an easy hike. There's a lot of beautiful flowers, and the creek's beautiful, and the rock formations were beautiful. It's just a lot. So it is a beautiful place to go to, but just be careful and maybe go with a friend. Hope you enjoyed.